So my name is Fred. Four-letter word that begins with an F. That's why I'm very diplomatic. 미것인 전에 막아냈다고 비오tisinago 오마서 와비웨트 농수병도민나고. Very historical place amongst our people. And we met with the Evanak, the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, and other peoples. The land of the Potawatomi, Menominees, and the Kickapoos, and all those people around the Great Lakes being our heartland of the Anishinaabe on the Inaaknigewin Turtle Island. Kizhebowse Makwa Kizhebowse Kizhebowse Makwa Kizhebowse Roshkoveneske. Niwen Gafitin Dagus Naganin. Sure, you go as so we so in the Jiminy go on. Fijon to them. So, for the benefit of those referred to the name here earlier, the colonists, one of the things that I am dedicated to is the decolonization. But I don't like the word decolonization. I like the word better, that we live on Anishinaabe. Rather than decolonizing and reclaiming, I say that we bring back our intrinsic being. And that's why when I give you my names, that is my citizenship. You see, what happened to me when I was 5 years old, I was brought into Medellin when I was 3 years old. And that was taken away from me in residential school. Phil Fontaine and myself and two other people, Charlene Bellew out of British Columbia, Val Watts, we are the ones that negotiated that residential school settlement agreement, out of which Truth and Reconciliation has arisen. That came from the heart of the Anishinaabe, not me, not my heart only, but yours as well. So what I'm here to tell you about today is not so much reclaiming, but rather to bring out what is in your heart, what is in your spirit, what is in your body, who you are as an Anishinaabe. I'm here to tell you, even though you think you might have forgotten many of those, you may have only postponed the life of the Anishinaabe, thanks to the settlers that may have come over here. Some of whom may have meant well, some who did not mean well. Those are part of the prophecies, but I'm not going to the prophecies. I've been given 1 hour or so, thereabouts, and to speak to you. There's so much to talk about, but I will try to make at least an introduction. And the reason why I do it that way is because you are Anishinaabe, you are indigenous, irrespective of the ethnic or the tribal background of which you come from. Very recently, our people also shared these lands with the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota. Lovely people. It's verified by the fact by this lovely lady who picked me up this morning, Jade. She picked me this morning. She said that she was, and always full of laughter. That's what I found out about her. And that's the way. I asked her why she was always laughing. She says, I try to be happy. And that is the spirit. And I said, you're spreading that, okay? Also want to acknowledge Sue, who I worked with a few years back. I'll just say a few years back because I don't want to tell her age, okay? I'll leave that to her story. Laura Horton, I see her over here. I worked with her for many years, and her husband. And I pay my respects, as I mentioned, to Delbert right now, and in association with all of our previous teachers people who worked so hard to maintain who we are as Anishinaabe. So, the presentation I'm going to share with you right now, as you told, when I received the notice, and you talk about Inaaknigewin Keynote, Nive, and we send the one we note. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Sometimes I will use my language. I believe I'm proficient enough, not because I have the ability to learn, but because the ancestors and our grandparents made it a point to teach me and spent a lot of times, from the time when I was 3 years old. They used to come and get me in the winter time. And sometimes there was one old man, Ofskivines from our community. He came and got me in the winter time. And he would bring me to his house, ask my mother, can I borrow your son for the night? I thought, playing outside in the cold winter like this, playing outside. And he would ask, and then he'd put some wood in the fire in the stove, make it nice and warm. And just as the sun had just gone down, he'd start talking. And I'd fall asleep, of course. I was 5 years old, 7 years old. And I'd wake up, the sun was coming up. He's still talking. I asked my mother, Mom, how come? How come this old man is talking to me? Sun's coming up and he's still talking. And she said, I know, because my mother was 8-degree Medew and so was my father. Because I know why. But you ask him, give him some more tobacco. So I gave him some tobacco, I asked him. And he said, this is the message he gave me at that time. In translation, I'm speaking to your spirit. Your spirit knows what I'm talking about because it's already in you. All I'm doing is talking to your spirit to wake up your mind so that you will know what I'm referring to. And that's the point. So, all night long, he's talking to me. He's talking to my spirit. I fell asleep. But you see what happens is every now and then, this happens to all of us. Every now and then we remember, I heard this somewhere before. That's the intrinsic nature, the inherent nature of what we're talking about here. Whether people are talking about the words that they use in the English language. They talk about sovereignty, they talk about inherent right of self-determination, they talk about, I'm the next politician. I still have a hangover as a politician. So I have advised many of our leaders at night, but when I say advise, I use that word very carefully because I have no knowledge, no original knowledge, no original wisdom. They call me an elder. I don't call myself an elder for the simple reason that I do not have any original knowledge, because elderhood means that has a connotation of wisdom and knowledge. But I do carry the wisdom of the ages. So it's not mine, it's yours. And so I've been given the ability to remember some of that and share that with you. In a way of reawakening what's inside of you already. So I'm not giving you anything that you don't have already. It's in you as an Anishinaabe. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So when I say that, one say, Inaaknigewin, I see that question over there. What does Inaaknigewin mean to you? And I see some other beautiful questions over here. Inaaknigewin, I'll tell you, out of respect as well. This morning, I was going to bring my pipe with me. A pipe that I carry that my great-great-great-grandfather would have used in 1701 when 42 nations, Anishinaabe, Nigutote, when they came together in the land of two mountains, where it is one reinforced the name that we have, Ojibwe. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you about when I get down to that part of it. And so I was going to bring that pipe, but because, with respect to the time I was given, I heard that the young people were going to do something this morning by way of officially opening this. I refer and I respect them, and we never try to overtake and overstep by taking over our own ceremonies. We conjoin in spirit what they were doing, so I thank them. Also thank each and every one of you. I'll be talking to you in person, but I'll be talking to your spirits as well. And you'll say, you know what? This is what happened, except it won't be the same kind of thing that happened to me when I was speaking to a bunch of medical professionals and psychiatrists in San Francisco. I lit the pipe and I said, my grandfather told me this. And they had a coffee break, and I got over here, a couple of them, they're talking about saying, this guy seems to make a lot of sense, except for the part where he believes that a stone is talking to him. Yes, my grandfather Rock was talking to me and talks to me, communicates with me, not in any particular language, but something that we've forgotten as a people. We've not practiced that for some time. You ever wonder why in your reserve, in your community, even though you think about something, you do something, people know about it already? They talk about that in the English language as rumors and kinds of insinuations, hints and whatnot. No, our people were able to communicate with one another mentally without using words. In much the same way as the trees communicate with one another. Much the same way as Keyhewce communicate with one another. Just put it down there, maybe. You need 3 chairs, do you? No, 2 chairs. 1 for each cheek. Okay. You got you. On that note, I want to share with you as well in this Christmas season, right? It's a happy season where we get together. May all your families be happy. May all your families be healthy when you get back to where you are, whatnot. I also wish to share with you that we are people of traditions, and the settlers try to copy by having their traditions as well. So let me share what are their traditions. I won't offer them tobacco on this one, but I'll share one of their traditions. Christmas Eve, Santa Claus was sitting by the fireplace in his front room. He was suffering from a terrible cold. Everything was going wrong. Mrs. Claus, her cookies had burnt. And he's sitting there disgusted. The elves had gotten into a little bit too much sauce. They hadn't finished their toys, and he had to deliver them all over the world that evening. And so elves had gotten a little too much. They're very, extremely happy. But the toys were not being built properly. So anyway, and then in his dismay and in his sickness, he's sitting there really teed off at everything. And a little angel walked into his front room. And he said, Mr. Santa Claus, I'm here to help you. He says, good. He says, what do you want me to do? He says, well, so the little angel, without listening to him, he said, he went over to the elves. He got into the little sauce as well. Start joining the elves and all those. Now, I don't mean, when I say little people, I don't mean Memegwesiok. I'm talking about those little people, those little elves. Okay, they're all working, and so happy as heck as can be whatever they're building, they don't know what they're building either. They're just putting things together because they're drunk. Okay. So anyway, so he had a little taste of some of that, and he liked it. He had some more. Came back to the front room. He said, "So, Mr. Claus, what would you like? Is there anything you'd like me to do?" He said, "Yes. Go get me a tree, please." That's the beginning of their Christmas tree. So the angel went, then dragged in a tree to the front room, and then nipped over to the elves again to have a little more sauce. Then he came back, and then now he drags a tree over to the Santa Claus, and he says, "So, Fatso, what would you like me to do with this tree?" To this day, that's why you see an angel sitting on top of a Christmas tree. So I thought I'd share that with you, and so you know where their traditions come from. I don't make fun of them. That was anyway. Let me share with you many of these things that we do. Could you please start right from the beginning? Go back to the beginning. Yeah. Inaaknigewin Winter. Oh, I said this river. It was a very historic river amongst our people that they used, because our people used waterways. And it's not surprising that we are that way, because every human being has at least 60 to 80% you're composed of water. Not surprised that you're drawn towards water and you refer to that. But the Anishinaabe people had a very, very close relationship with the water. Okay? Nivi? Keynote. Tell you, in northwestern Ontario, where I come from, Lake of the Woods. They call it Lake of the Woods. Here is some of the things that happen that we have to try and remember and repurpose our lives. It's not Lake of the Woods. It's called Vaikotaugag, which translates to Lake of Dunes. It's a shallow lake, but it goes back to Lake Agassiz on the Ice Ages. That's where Name was, the sturgeon. After Sandusky Company had cleared out Lake Erie in the late 1870s and 1880s, cleared Lake Erie of sturgeon, they looked for another lake, and they found what they call Lake of the Woods. And by 1900, they had cleared it out as well of Name, which our people relied on. Our people relied on Name, Manoman, wild rice. And when the people and the settlers approached us to make a treaty, they said, "We don't need anything." With all due respect, you know. Come on, watch it. Go and have another even. The Creator gave us everything that we need, and gave us rice and gave us sturgeon. My mother tells me when she was 10 years old in 1910, that lake where Laura, I believe she still lives there, and so that Manitoba, those rapids, spirit rapids, they flow into Lake of the Woods, that they used to just be black with when the sturgeon was laying eggs and so on and so forth. It says the clouds used to just be black, but it wasn't clouds, it was geese. That's how bountiful our resources were. As they called them resources. We don't call them resources. They're alive, very much like we are. So anyway, and so by 1900, they also pretty much cleared out Lake of the Woods, and they blamed us. We're fishing too much, we're overfishing. Hey, we've been doing this for hundreds of years. We haven't cleaned them out. Now I have pictures in my files. I have pictures of railways when they, Vaux cars, when they put that 28 Vaux cars. Do you know how big a Vaux car is? Well, I have jumped several trains in my lifetime. I know how big a Vaux car is. 28 of those filled with sturgeon being shipped to New York for the purpose of transferring and cleaning out the sturgeon for the eggs and reselling them as Russian caviar, which was the most expensive and the most favored parts of the fish. That's what they did. And they blamed us. And when they cleaned that out, then they started going towards the pickerel, the walleye. By 1914, they're also pretty much have cleaned that out. Now, Lake of the Woods extends, Kavaviko extends into Minnesota waters, Manitoba waters, and Ontario waters. And then they passed laws, right? Restricting us. We can't fish anymore. So they were decimating our food supplies. But now, think of the life of the Name, think of the Oga, which is the pickerel. Think of the Kinoje, the pike, all those fish, the bass. Think, that the fish start to realize there's a boundary here. Kind of like my mother and I used to laugh at that. I would tell her, so there's a boundary over here. So imagine the fish. You see, now they passed a law. On the Minnesota side, you can catch only 3 pickerel. On the Ontario side, at that time you were allowed to catch up to 6. So the walleye, the pickerel on the Ontario side, the Manitoba side, they all get together, say, let's swim over towards the Minnesota waters. We're safer because they only catch 3 over there, so we're safe. If that's BS, well, the fish are also smart, eh? Same thing with the beaver. In April, on April the 15th, north of the CN line, you can still catch and trap beaver. South of the CN line, you're not allowed except until the end of March to trap beaver. I ask the question, does the beaver know where the CN line is? Much less give a damn as to where the CN line is? I'm going over this darn railway track over here and I'm going to go over there. I got my little honey waiting on the other side of the track and we're going to make some little beaver. So anyway, those are some of the things. Inaaknigewin, to me, what does that mean? That's why I was going to bring the fife. And there's a song, the fife song. Otokichiwan is the stems, I point at. Why? I'm offering to get the inspiration of what I'm supposed to do. And that's where you get the directions that they call laws. The difference between their laws and our laws. Their laws are to be enforced. In other words, this is the law. Yesterday, or 2-3 days ago, I was meeting with the people at Northwest Bay, Inaaknigewin, as they call it. And they changed that name, and that's what I was looking for. You name it the way you want in your community. And they changed that. They said, Inaaknigewin is too strong. Well, the word that they use now is Inaaknigewin, pointing towards the direction. You see, the difference there is this. Inaaknigewin is a law that is meant to be enforced. Our people did not and do not enforce those laws. They're spiritually, you consent to them. You comply with them. So that's the difference between enforcement and compliance. That's our ways. So as a result of the enforcement, and we're supposed to comply with those laws, we overcrowd penal institutions. Those are some of the colonial effects of what has been happening with these, why we have to go back to our ways. And if you think that our laws were not there to be respected, that's the word, is respect. In 1982, in the 1970s to 79 to 1982, when I was advising the leadership, the National Indian Brotherhood, which became the Assembly of First Nations, and the discussions in Canada that talk about Section 35, the word is, the treaty and aboriginal rights are hereby affirmed and recognized. The word I was looking for was respect. It didn't make it. It did not make it there. And you see some of the differences. When I tell you these stories, I'm not here to simply ridicule their ways. I'm here to tell you the differences. Pierre Elliott Trudeau was the Prime Minister of the day. And then every morning we brought our drum from Treaty 3, we brought our pipes, and we did the morning ceremony. And we did all that. We carried a little model of the little shake tent, Chiskan, and we carried the pipes, we carried some ribbons and tobacco, and that's what we used along with that drum. And we did that. And the first ministers are all sitting around. I took the pipe around to each one of them, touched them on the shoulder, and the Prime Minister, yes, he did touch the pipe as well. Next morning, we did the same thing. And he had a microphone on like this. I guess he thought it was off. You could hear him say, "Good grief, do we have to do this every morning?" And I came to him with that pipe again. And I said, "Yes, Mr. Prime Minister, we do this every morning, all day long." That's the difference, okay? So anyway, he was supposed to have been the most intellectual prime ministers of all time, so they say. And that was his, those were his comments. So anyway, so that's why I was telling you about Name. Now, what does Name mean to us? In my area and in your area in Shnaway country, Name is one of the principal, one of the principal clans amongst our people. So you see how close they are to you, and they're already in you. And all the other animals, I'll be talking about that. So that's what I say, Inaaknigewin, you are given the direction. And that's what you're looking for when you say that, you're asking for that spiritual law of our people. And Inaaknigewin, to be given that direction. That's why we do our ceremonies every morning. And so I thank those who would have begun this morning. And so I'm telling you these kinds of things and whatnot. Now, Keyhole, that's just the, did you know that the sturgeon? A long time ago, this land, Inaaknigewin, this was covered by an inland sea from what is now known as Florida to the Rocky Mountains in California, all the way up to the Northwest Territories, northeastward and to the south coast, known as the Appalachians, the mountains. It's like a bowl, and this was the inland sea. And this is where Nana Vaugeot was walking, the first Anishinaabe. You remember those, when you hear those stories, they always tell you, everything is in America, Nana Vaugeot. In Wisconsin, there's a variation because of our dialect. In Wisconsin, they call Nana Vaugeot Wina Vaugeot. Okay, so different, but it's the same original Anishinaabe, the first one that was made. And so, and then, but he had 4 names. Nana Vaugeot, named after Wavus, okay? And then the second name was Kizhebowse, forever walking along the shore, okay? That's how they started. Everything is in the Vaugeot, that's how they started off, and then that's the variation of one of the stories, beginning of the stories. Another one was Whiskey Chuck, The Cree still use that because the Cree are very close brothers and sisters to the Anishinaabe. In fact, they're part of that, a part of us. But because nationhood is a self-defining concept, I respect that. I don't argue with them. But they do many of our ceremonies the same way. Many of their words are very much the same, except they add something like in their dialect. Like, for instance, Saskatchewan, when they say Makwa, they say Maskwa. When they say, Wakaigan house, or what we say, they say Waskaigan. So they keep asking that. So I used to teach Terry Bellegarde when he was the president of the National Indian Brotherhood. I advised most of the national chiefs, and I advised them. So I said, Ferry, when you guys go fishing, we go fishing. Because we tease each other that way in a friendly way. So, getting down to the wanted to thank you for the. I see the center over here, centered. I just took a quick walk on the way where the trees are named in the Anishinaabe way. Kizhebowse, for instance, is Kizhebowse is the means, the cedar. It also means the sky. Kizhebowse, okay. So similarities, and that is the closeness of many of these living beings out there. So, give me the next frame, please. Now, here, I use this picture, okay, because this is the cosmos as we see it, and we are here in this little spot, and yet we claim we are the only one with life. You imagine that? Billions of stars. But we are the only one. Compare that to your beach. Go down to the beach. One little grain of sand will tell you, I am different. I'm superior. I'm the only one alive. Figure that one out. That's why I show you these pictures, to show you that there is a difference in Anishinaabe. We talk about Anishinaabe, I'll come to that, and to say you talk about that individual, okay? I'm telling you, be proud to be Anishinaabe, but not so proud to start looking down on other people because of what you are and who you are. There's a difference between arrogance and pride. Pride is very close related to humility. But all that, when you're superior, you claim to be that arrogant, I am different, I'm superior. Next, I'm going to try and speed along over here because of the time factor that I've been given and respect for you people that I have. Now, Kagagiywe Fimatisiwin. Kagagiywe in the dialect, in the spiritual dialect, Kagagiywe means eternal. And anything that is eternal in our way is sacred from the Creator. So Kagagiywe, Inaaknigewin, eternal life. Life doesn't end just because you pass on. You go to the eternal life way. That's where you came from. So that's why it's eternal. So, and then, in the Kagagiywe Vimatazin, the creation comes, that's what we mean, Vimatazin. Everything in creation is Vimatazin. Everything is alive, okay? And there is no such thing in our way as there is in the English language, the difference between what is animate and what is inanimate. Like the stone is no life in that stone. Contrary to what we're thinking. There are very much alive. In fact, you get life from them. So, and there is no difference between, as I say, the inanimate and the animate. And also, the sacred and the secular law is united, is all in one. Whereas in the Canadian system and the United States system, they just separate between the concept of the difference between the church and the state. And there's nothing wrong with that insofar as they are concerned. I don't make a judgment on that. I only point out that they make a difference. Anishinaabe does not make a difference. Everything is spiritual. And there's a difference between religion and spirituality. That's what the Anishinaabe is, spiritual. Not necessarily religious. And if you are religious, I congratulate you. You follow your way. If it works for you, that's fine. That's beautiful. I was raised as a Catholic boy, okay? And when I gave that up again, went back to my traditions in Videwin, okay? So that's me. I'm not here to talk about myself, I'm here to talk to you about other things. Next. Okay, you want to stay there? All right, stay there then. What I'm showing you here is the Kizhebowse Makwa, the eternal road. That's where your spirit goes, in this eternal road, and connects with all that. Now here you want me to talk about the, talk about the Inaaknigewin. So you didn't say talk about the ladies, which talking about myself is one of my favorite topics. My second favorite topic is the ladies. And so, what happened here is this. These grandfather rocks, when the Earth was placed in amongst the solar system, there were only rocks, mountains, stones, boulders, sand, anything that you refer to as aggregate. That's all there was on this land, on Mother Earth. And so the mountains, the grandfather rocks, I call them, they asked for some company. They asked the Creator, the Great Spirit, to share this beautiful land with us. Whereupon, the First Lady appeared in the form of a star and came down. And in translation, the grandfather, the great Creator, sent me down to be with you in answer to your prayers and to your invocations. And then, when she appeared, she said, I will look after the rivers of the skies. And so, there is more water in the atmosphere than there is on the ground here on Earth. If you check your scientific parts, they have one of the biggest rivers that they talk about is the Pineapple Express, which goes from the Hawaiian Islands and goes over across now, causing us to have the snow. She says, I'll look after the rivers of the sky. Okay, and then I'll be with you forever. The second lady appeared again in the form of a star. And you check out your science books. Science also says that life actually came from the stars. Our people knew that. They didn't have to read books. That's what they believed, okay? And I'm not saying when I'm saying all this, no, we knew these things already. I'm not saying we're superior. I'm just saying that our people had knowledge, through their spiritual ways of following. The second lady came down, and then when she came down, she said it started to rain. And started to rain, she says, I will look after Kimio Navo, Gukinoenda. I will live with you, and will be with you forever. And as it started to rain, it also started causing a fog, mist, the clouds and all that. Started to rain. It fell on the grandfather rocks, and the steam started to rise, forming clouds. And that is the first instance of the sweat lodge. Where you gain, if you think that the grandfather rocks are not alive, they're giving you life when you go to a sweat lodge. So That's to give you healing. Okay, so all of those kinds of things. So you know what I'm talking about. And then the third one also took that water and said, I too have been sent down to be with you, and I'll be with you forever. To come and live with you. Because you will need, I will need to look after the water that you also need, which is to cleanse you from time to time and to nurture you and cleanse you. And so, that fresh water, I will look after that. The fresh water of the lakes, the rivers, the streams. That the first one was given the responsibility of looking after the salt water of the Kizhebowse, which is the oceans and the seas. This one over here was given the responsibility to look after the clean water, the lakes, the rivers, and the streams, and underground, the aquifers, and all that. The fourth one also came down. He said, I too have been sent down to be with you because the Creator, our grandfather, is preparing to send the two-legged down upon the earth. This one is going to be so pitiful. We are going to have to teach this one how to live, how to make a living. And all of us, they were commanded, all of us, the trees, the animals that were already here, everything that's on this earth is alive. We are been told to look after our little brother. And this one's is going to call himself Nisinave. Okay? So give me the next one there, please. So now, Nisinave is was given, means Nisina, means, as you know, descended. But we, as men, from a long time ago, knew that we were the humblest of all creatures. So we call it Anisha Nave, Anishinave. Nave is male. Anisha means for nothing, of no value. That's what we call ourselves. But we know that the Creator does not make anything of no value. We call it Nishinave. Now, I mentioned this, that, it takes 13 times for the grandmother that lights the night sky for this one here is born. 9 times to be carried in water. And only the ladies have been given that gift to carry that sacred water and bring forth birth onto the earth, which is where the Anishinaabe comes from. So you see, Anisha, Nave, there's no mention of a woman here. I mentioned that back in the 70s, when Germaine Greer and some of those people were talking about women's lib, saying that all men are chauvinistic, and we probably are. We're just as chauvinistic as anybody else, and so we were accused of. That could very well be true, and maybe I am that way as well. But you see, and they said, you see, we've been telling you men, we are superior. We are the dominant people here on earth. You guys don't know anything. We know everything. We are the dominant. That was the mantra of the Women's Live movement. And it's true to some extent. See, when I was chief, we never had women come to our meetings up until that time. Why? Here is a system, a secret of governance, a Anishinaabe governance. The women didn't have to come to the meetings. Why? Because, I'll give you an example. My mother, there's a man who was on council, he carried the treaty medal, and he came around and said, our chiefs had a meeting, our council had a meeting, and they're going to have another one next week. And they're going to talk about more about what I'm here to tell you about. And so after he told us that, then what the issues, my mother would tell us, here's how they did it a long time ago. and these are the traditions, and so she would tell us. So this is what you would have to say if when you go to that meeting. Next day, the women get together. They play cards, they play whatever it is, they visit one another in the circle. Well, being curious, I went and listened several times. And they're talking about what happened the night before and whatever. They're sharing things. And they said, "Kisagasoy, Duke." What does that mean, Sagasoy, Duke? That's our meeting. They lit the pipe to have discuss the issues. Sagasoy, Duke. Yeah. So that evening, she came home, and we had something to eat for the evening, and then she said, "I have to ask you guys something, tell you something." She raised 4 boys. She never had any daughters. She only had boys, and 4 of them that survived. I'm the youngest, and I say, the best looking, right? Anyway, I'm the youngest, and she told us. So, in translation, she said, so they had a meeting last night, and apparently it was a good meeting, but not one. She wasn't mad or angry. She says, "Is there anything that might interfere with anything here? No? Okay. I want to be respectful. This is your meeting, so if there's anything you want me to do, shut up or something like that, I will, okay?" So anyway, she said, they had a good meeting, and they all said something. But not once do I hear any of your names having said anything. She says, after I told you guys. She didn't give us hell. She just reminded us. That's the accountability. Okay? The women are the ones that are telling the men what they're supposed to say at that meeting. And the guys, we are proud. We give our opinion, but yet we take orders from the women. Are we chauvinistic? Probably. Externally, we are. But look at that. So, our men do take orders, believe it or not. Here's the proof. Look at any of your communities and look at the men as they walk. They got baggy pants in the ass. Because there's nothing there. You get kicked in the ass so many times, you lose it. It's got to go somewhere. Where does it go? It goes here. So anyway, that's the accountability. Next. So, and here we were placed, after the 13th term, we're placed on. So when I say that there's no mention of a woman, because they remain spiritual, we somehow have lost that, the actual practice of that. That's why we have to reclaim that and relive the way our people did. So we were placed here on Turtle Island, Inaaknigewin, and so that's, and the reason why I use this particular picture, because if you look at the top of the shell, that's where the forests and the lakes and all those, and this is where this land is. Next picture, please. Now, if you look at this, look at the turtle. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, which corresponds with the 13 moons that shine at night in her full glory. And I was raised by my mother and raised by my grandmother, my father having died when I was 5 years old. So if you see any bias towards womankind here, you will understand that the greatest influence that came from me were the women's teachings, or called learnings, that I gained from that. So there are 13. And if you study, as I did several times, study the Keynote, you'll see all around over here, in these little parts over here, little studs that there are over here, you'll count something like about 28 of them. Wow. That, to me, from what I was told, the facts of life, more or less corresponds with the menstrual cycle. So you see the power of the women, that there's a subtle power, sometimes not so subtle. You get a kick in the ass. It's not so subtle. So there are the carapace and the vertebrals. Okay, so I tell you this about the turtle, and that's why we, in my stories, that's why we refer to this island as Turtle Island, Inaaknigewin. And then it was also. Next, please. Now then, when we were born and came down, look at this. When I go fasting, you'll see these stars. They're not aligned this way. I use that only to give you the example that there are 32 stars, but there really are these 8 stars in the 4 circles, where we get the 4 from. 4 seasons, 4 stages of life, and everything that is in 4s to us is why we have referred to as the sacred 4. Okay? 4 earths, 4 skies, 4 directions, 4 stages of life, everything that's in 4s, okay? So that's why I mentioned that. So this is where we came down. Nisana is what I said, descended, and Anishinaabe, and then the humblest creature. So we don't mention a woman there. You see, because to mention a woman as Anisha would be to denigrate her sanctity, her sacredness. It's us guys that we depend on you. Okay. If I am humbling the man as being worthless, I did not say worthless, the humblest. And it means Anisha means, what do you do that for? Anisha saga. Anishigain, Angego, Anishawa. Why you do that? Anisha. Of no particular value is what we're saying. So to mention a woman in that language is the same thing. So that's what I'm talking to you about. So now you can see next. And so now then, we were given many things. And it's the men that carry this. If I'm picking on the men, it's because I can speak to the humility and the humbleness of the man as a creature. And but the woman looks at that. Why? Because look at this. This is where the children come from. There is no love on this earth more precious and more sacred than a mother's love for a child, including me. And so when I say that, I remind you guys, the men here, no matter how old you are, I just turned, and I'll be 84 in April. You young ladies, don't pay any attention to that, okay? Everybody's, the old saying says, a lot of snow on the roof, but there's still a lot of fire in the furnace. Oh, I was supposed to tell the truth, wasn't I? Okay, so look, this is so it's the humblest of creatures, but we mention a woman because I want to talk about. We were told, and we were accusing that you don't treat your women properly. Well, sometimes it works both ways. We're not also treated properly either, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what we were taught in the 7 laws of creation, as they call them. Okay, they call them 7 grandfather teachings. Right away, I ask a question: what about the grandmother teachings? They're Anishinaabe learnings. Okay, next. Now, we were given many things for us to survive. I used the Big Dipper over here to explain the seven laws that they refer to. That's a recent explanation, but I don't deny that. But look at it this way. Look at the Big Dipper up in the sky. You see these 5 stars over here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The inside of that form a handle. There's 3 more over here which do not show up on this particular picture, but they're there. When you go fasting, you'll see them, 8 stars. That is the eagle staff. This is our flag that you use when you do the grand entry. The eagle staff leads the way. On each side, you might have the American flag. On the other side, you might have the Canadian flag, but that is our flag. And the flag carrier just does not necessarily carry the 7 laws, just to remind us that they are there spiritually. Okay, so now then if you look at all that, that for it looks like a cup. And that's where, from my visions, and when I do my ceremonies, it's where I understand the 7 learnings come from. I call them learnings because I have nothing to teach you that you already don't have. But we learn. So there's a difference between here in a matter of semantics and a matter of meanings. Next. Now then, what we were given, those 7 laws of creation, let me explain that to you. The eagle was the one that was called by the Creator to come, to rise up into the 4 skies, to meet with the Creator. And having met with the Creator, the eagle was told, I want you to look after all life of the Anishinaabe and the indigenous peoples on Turtle Island. I want you to look after all that. Make sure of that. That's why you see the eagle. And the next one I was given was the Ochechak, which is the one that was given. The medicines, the raven, Kagagi, was given the powers, how to use those medicines, okay? And then all the others were given the way we use we borrow from all the other creatures to use our medicines for healing. But was the hummingbird. I also have something for you. And the hummingbird, Nenokase, was called upon and told those ladies, that the first lady I was telling you about, the keepers of the water, come on up, the Creator wants to ask you to do something. She says, I can't go that high. I'm too small. I'm too little. I'll get blown away. She says, come, the Creator wants to talk to you. I'll try, but I don't think I can make it. We'll help you. You see, this is the way the Anishinaabe looks at himself, and I say himself, like a little hummingbird. Nothing I can do without all your help. That's why you place tobacco when you go get medicine. When you take an animal, you place tobacco as an offering, because they were told to look after little brother. So that's your offering, that you acknowledge all that. So then, the hummingbird, then, okay, I'll try. And the hummingbird went up. We'll help you, they told the hummingbird. Got up to see the Creator and flew around the Creator. So happy was Nenokase that listen to the Creator, and they're given Kizhebowse. That's what I want you to give. And those Kizhebowse includes those 7 learnings. And so happy he was, and flew around, and then wanted to come right back down right away to start, because that's what I want you to spread. The stars, the star makers, star beings, told us, no, just wait, come over here to the Big Dipper. Drink of the nectar of life before you go down. So now you see, Nedokase, those of you that get up early in the morning, on your way home from a night out, going to see your sweetheart. You go home eventually. I remember those days. I don't know if I ever had a lover and all that, but I sure spent the night out there. And then you come home, and then, okay. Sometimes when I was out in Oregon, I went and sat amongst the mountains early one morning at sunrise. All of a sudden I could hear a little whispering, something. Oh, there's a hummingbird going around from flower to flower. That's the one that's doing that. Spreading that love, those 7 teachings, 7 learnings, going around spreading them from flower to flower. And that's why, as I understand it, that our designs, that the women, when they design beadwork, they use a floral design. Because in your dreams, your spirit wanders up into the sky that I was showing you there. All the stars look like flowers in your visions at night. So the hummingbird Jerome was told, go kiss every one of them. And so the hummingbird did go kiss around every one of them and drank from the nectar of life before coming down. And so he started coming down and came across that woman who looks after all that water of the skies, and came down to the rainwater and got all wet. It got so wet, soaked, he said, I can't fly anymore, the water's too heavy. But then before it came down, the creator, or the hummingbird, was able to fly backwards for the first time in its lifetime. The hummingbird can fly backwards. The only other one that can do that at times is the dragonfly. They were given those gifts by the Creator. So he was able to fly. So he came down now, he's fluttering there, and he's, Gavagishin, I'm going to fall. And the grandmother that looks after all that water and the rainwater, they told him, well, get away from the water. Come to the sunshine where the sun is shining. Hummingbird did that. That's when the hummingbird was given those gifts, those beautiful colors of the prism, like the rainwater, like the rainbow. First instance of the rainbow, and that's where the hummingbird got its beautiful colors. So you see, everything is owing to the spiritual beings as we are. Next. Oh, pardon me. I want to show you something. Go back there. Now you see, we've been, as an Anishinaabe, we are not preoccupied with victimization. People seem to think, that we're always, always being victims and whatnot. For sure, we've suffered many things in our history, including the ice ages. You see, here is North America, here is Turtle Island, and you see, at one time, the last ice age, and they say, scientists will say quite often, nothing could have been here on this place in the last, before 11,000 years ago, because there was nothing here. And the Pope and the laws say, no, there was nobody here. And what there was over here might have been animals. And so there were no human beings here. We were not human beings. We had no laws. We had no knowledge of anything. That's the theory of discovery, promulgated by the Pope, authorizing people who discovered new lands. If you see strange people there, you don't know who they are. They are like animals. They don't have anything. So you have the right to declare war on them if they don't listen to you. You can take anything they learn just like animals. And animals don't have any of these things. Separation between the four-legged water beings, the crawlers, the flyers, those. I'm starting to touch on some of those things, Nivi and some of those animals. Okay, so that's what happened. And so yes, we were in fact inflicted with many things. We'll come to that here. Okay, so, but that was but we were given. Now I use the Sitaon, which is the dream catcher. That's an Anishinaabe. I do not use the medicine wheel, not because I don't know what it is, not because I don't respect it. I love it, I respect it a great deal. It was never given to me in ceremony, so I don't use it, which is like the parallel of a copyright. Okay, I can't use it unless given to me spiritually. Same thing with songs. I went to a powwow one time north of Edmonton, and in the middle of the powwow, the young people got up and they sang, "Here's a song that was given to us spiritually." And they sang the travel song. Travel song came from my cousin, Alex Keith, Nafkamiganung. When he was sick and he lived through that sickness, that song was given to him. The story and the purpose of the travel song, that's the last song you use in the powwow in the gathering. So when you sing that song, everything comes to an end. That was supposed to, they sang that song. This is the travel song. I recognized it. And they kept on going. Traditionally, and by our customs, we use that only at the end. Okay, so those are some of the protocols that we have to abide. And so, the Sitaon, I call it, that is the protector, okay, for the guardians of the families. And so, and also, if you look at that Sitaon, it is circular, but not all of them are circular. They're made out of willows. The ones we use, believe it or not, I look at some of the cars that our people use. They use the dream catcher, and they hang it there. But the favorite ones are the ones made in Japan or made in Taiwan. Yeah. Why? Because they're beautiful. Well, so are ours. But ours are being spiritual. So you see the teepees, the water, the skies, the moon, you see all that of life and creation. Sitaon, that's the one. And in the middle, that's the one that covers the cosmos, the universe. And in the middle is the grandmother spider. And that's the one that looks at your protection. Anytime there's any kind of movement within these filaments, she will go and explore. And if it's not good, she'll get rid of it. If it's okay, she'll let it go. That's the dream catcher that was always hung on the cradle of our children. Now, everybody talks about how beautiful the dream catcher is, Sitaon. They talk about because the feathers, they hang there, they beautify that. Nobody talks about the tassels. Well, I'll tell you something about the tassels. That's the one that represents the intergenerational umbilical cord. That's the one that carries the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, how beautiful you are. Those kinds of gifts that come down, they're the ones there. She's the one that umbilical cord of the ages, which is a parallel to what the scientists refer to as the DNA, the RNA, passing down your physical heredities, not only that, your mind, body, heart, and spirit, and who you are. So that's what I talk about with the tassels. That's its purpose, okay? Yet we don't really celebrate that, okay? So anyway, next. By the way, let me know when my time is up, okay? So let me know when my time is up so that I know I don't want to overspend my time here. Okay, so now we, okay, so the Kizhebowse Makwa is the spiritual laws of creation, including The way I call it is love, kindness, sharing, respect, truth, courage, and humility. And sometimes people will correct me. You forgot honesty. You forgot, just a minute now. There is something to be said for that. If I forget anything, that's me. I'm forgetful. So when that happens, go back to the original word, Kizhebowse, and it covers everything that comes from the Creator, which is of kind gifts. And you'll find honesty, you'll find other things in there that are not included in the 7 because there's more than. I don't recall ever being told that the Creator said 7. In fact, I don't recall what our people said. You know, I asked my grandmother, I asked my mother talking to me one time, I asked them, you know, see, because when I was in grade 5, I knew everything. I still do, at least I pretend I do. I knew everything in science. I can hear some thunder beings coming. When it opened, the whole dog was go play some tobacco on the ground. I hear some thunder. I said, why? I just come back from residential schools and finished grade 5. I took science. I said, Grandma, in my own way, I try to explain to her, Grandma, there are no thunder beings. You see, Grandma, what happens is when lightning strikes a cloud or when lightning shows up, it causes the air to expand and it slaps back, and that's what you hear as the thunder. Grandma, there. She looked at me, her mouth open, nodded her head. My mother came and said, okay, well, go put some tobacco on the ground, listen to your grandmother, eh? So I did. Then it started storming. Rain, hail, wind, lightning. And I go over, not far from the house, farther from about the end of this building is where the pine tree is. That's where I'm standing. You see how stupid this is? Who's going to stand under a pine tree when there's lightning? When there's a storm? When you're likely to get hit by lightning? You don't do that. And there I'm standing there. I'm scared. I'm scared to run back to the house. I can't. Well, I have to. I can't. No, I can't. So I made a run for it, dash for it. Kicked the door open, and there's Grandma sitting on the floor as she always does. You know, all grandmothers sit on their knees, and she looked at me and says, nah. That's all she said. Nah. Translation would be there. I'm soaked and I'm scared. Well, now I'll make my offerings to the thunder makers and to the winged ones that our people believe, because they believe in the spirits and all that. So anyway, that is the Nanoka said, the one that's spreading all those good things. Okay. Next. Now, we were given many things, I say. We've survived many things, including the Ice Age that covered that. And this is where many of our clans are still here in spirit. See, when I do traditional funerals, I mention all of these, the water beings, the four-leggeds, the flyers, all of them, I mentioned them because they're there as you travel to the four skies back to the spirit world. You'll see them as you travel back. Nothing has become extinct spiritually, everything's still here. And say, you mean there were elephants on this? They're not elephants, they were mastodons. There were horses. They say that Spanish people brought the horse, and yet I hear ancient stories. I tell the ancient stories of Shtatim. The horse would have been no taller than what is now the donkey. It was not a donkey. Called them Shtatim. And so you talk about those that haven't been here Okay, they talk about. Here's the other one that I was asking. One lady came and told us, "What do you call an elephant?" Well, according to our traditions, oh, we call them chichivotaki because of the tusks. Called chichivotaki. And where you come from? She was a young lady. She certainly knew more than we did. And what do you call them? She said, no. You don't call them shtettin. What do you call them? Kizhebowse. The old wrinkled one. It's translation. I said, well, speaking of the old wrinkled one, that's all I said. I turned around. Anyway, so that's the one. So there's the beaver, there's all kinds of the animals we had. There's the eagle, there's the flyers, there's the water beings. Those are our clans. So they were here long before, okay? So I'll show you this picture, okay? So anyway, next. Now then, so you see the Anishinaabe encircled by all the clans that we have. Those of your clans, and that's why I say, Vijot it's the lynx. Here's the thing about lynx. I asked, what's the lynx? Wanisham Shivijo. Vishivijo, my grandmother told me, it's an animal that lives underwater. It's a very big animal, and it's the way it swims, sometimes you can't even see them. They're so fast. That's in the water. Then as I looked for that, it turns out it's a seal. In Lake of the Woods, there's no seals there. Why? Think, Fred. The colonials built the hydro dams, closing those rivers, closing Rainy River, the one that Laura comes from, that area. Seals don't come through there anymore, through those hydro dams, but there were a long time ago, Lake of the Woods. Okay, they were all over. So that's really what I'm talking about. So then I went over to Lake Superior, where they used to live as well, and followed the Great Lakes, went down to Gaspé, and then down to St. Lawrence River, down to the Gaspé, and the Monster people, the Montagnais, the Innu, they're Anishinaabe. So I went all over, looking after, trying to find my original clan. Finally found one, because they told me, yes, it looks like a seal, except it's much bigger. It's got big, long teeth, called tusks. Talking about the walrus. Then the walrus became the saber-toothed tiger, and from saber-toothed tiger came the cave lion. That was the original one. So my point here is just telling you this: if you look for the history of your clan, you're going to find a beautiful, beautiful story, and that is the continuation of who we are. So that's why I wanted to mention the clans. Okay, now, next. Now then, after the ice ages, or during the ice age, some 11,000 years ago, remember, nobody was over here. Well, we got a new story for that, to correct that. So after that receded, it formed this. And did you know that when the ice ages receded and that inland sea disappeared and dissipated, there were remnants. Lake of the Woods, Lake Erie, the Great Lakes, there were sturgeon. Now sturgeon, name, they were here. They're related. They're related to the shark. A shark does not have this. I can see that very clearly. So if you don't mind taking it down, why don't you put down, shut up now. I will. I'll be quiet very shortly. And then you'll be sorry. No. I'm going to finish it because it's a sacred story. And so, where was I? See, I forget. Sure. Yeah. Anyway, sturgeon is closely related to the shark. You wonder, where did the shark come from in Lake of the Woods fresh water? The shark, the sturgeon, has no bones. It only has cartilage. So when this ice receded, it left certain things, certain beings. The sturgeon was one of them, out of which we lived. Okay, name. Okay. So what do you call a whale? We call that mishi name. A long time ago when you referred to something that was big, you say mishi, like the Mississippi River, mishizivi. Okay, so, and then some of our languages transform. Now that was the Ice Age, okay? If you ever get a chance, as I did, I'm cutting my story short now, if you ever get a chance to go down to Cahokia, which is across from St. Louis, that's where they were trying to figure out who lived there. They couldn't figure that out. Anthropologists or archaeologists couldn't figure out. Because many people, many nations, indigenous nations, moved to Cahokia at the same time in answer to Kizhebowse, who was looking after us to go down south where it was warmer because we were starving, we were freezing, and taught us to go down and live down there until the ice disappeared. And that was the Ice Age. And so we're down there. The mounds are still there. They can't figure that out. I went down there. And when you go down those tunnels, those mounds, you sit there. Something starts to come to you. The spiritual beings are with you. You've experienced this, my friends. You've experienced the visitation of the spirits, not only in dreams. Sometimes you feel something touching your hair, sometimes touching your cheeks, or just giving you a poke. That's the spirits of the ancestors. They have left their bodies, but they haven't left you. Okay, so they're still with us. Next. So now we survived that Ice Age. Okay, just showing you this, how we had survived. Next. Now, I wanted to touch with you. When I go and I'm involved and asked to go and speak to Child and Family Services, I ask them, you know how to say child in our language? Yes, Havinochi. How do you say family? We don't know. Nigotote. Nigotote is how you say family. And the family, and the Nigotote means a family, means a community, a family of families. It also means a nation. That's Nigotote. In English translation, hearts embedded in one. The heart. So when you say you're of consensus, you say you are of one mind. Put your minds together and it becomes consensus. When you are feeling as you are the one another, Nigotote, that's your hearts belonging to the one heart. And the word ote prevails in all of our languages. Okay? Tewe egan refers to the drum. Dote refers to that. Almost everything you say has to do with the heart, ote. Okay, so that's who you are. So we are a family. That was, okay, next. Now, I show you that heart because our heart's embedded in one. But we are divided and we are broken because the Anishinaabe, indigenous diplomatic relations we got along, I mentioned to you how we lived together. It was the Indian Act up in Lake of the Woods, the Lakota, I should say the Dakota. They lived with us together. There's intermarriage. We never had a buffalo or bison as our clan. Now in southern Minnesota, they have that. And well, now they never had Maengan They never had a wolf. Now they do. That's because of intermarriage. Okay, so, but the Indonesian arrived and said, "You guys don't belong here, get out of here," chased them away, at the expense of the threat of soldiers moving in, getting rid of them, like they did when they forced marched the Cherokee in the Trail of Tears and forced them to live westward. The Cheyenne, they are originally from Hudson Bay, between Hudson Bay and Garden River. They lived there, they came and lived with us, Garden River. Then they moved south down to the Minneapolis area, and those areas. You see, Cheyenne is Shawnee, which is the English translation of how they misspelled that, so they're Cheyenne. But you go to Cheyenne country in Montana, they speak the same language as we do, and their signs are in Anishinaabe. Okay, so, and they gave me a gun, by the way. There's Jade was telling me that the customs asked her, "You have a gun?" Well, Cheyenne gave me a gun. It's about this long, gold-plated, the one that the Cheyenne used to kill Custer. So there you are. So anyway, if I ever go across the customs, I'll say, "Where's Trump?" Okay, so anyway. So the Anishinaabe settled the far reaches, the four directions of the rivers, the Turtle Island, okay? And we had alliances. We have a covenant with the Cherokees who live in Oklahoma, because our people, when they get down to the Caribbean to get that migas, that shell that you use in video, that's one of the most revered at that time, okay? That's the one that traveled along with the prophecies and all that. I said I wouldn't get into the prophecies, it's a long story. So we have covenants, we have treaties, we have rites of passage, but not with the Haudenosaunee, that means the people of the Longhouse, the people of the Iroquois Confederacy, the original five, and joined by the Tuscarora later. And then we have a Cherokee, the Creeks, the Choctaws, the Catawbas, Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. And then came discovery, and they fought for the colonial supremacy of Turtle Island, and the four horsemen of the Anishinaabe apocalypse. And next. Those were the Indonesian, the missionary, and then the policeman and the game warden that prevents us from leaving our reserve from going out. Okay. Couldn't even go down to this river over here if it ended. As far as they were concerned, the reserve ended where the river's edge. You had to have permission from the Indonesians. Okay, so anyway, then the residential school, and we're all taken away. The murder and missing Indian women and girls, the penal institutions, the residential schools, the children's aid societies, all those were taken away. Our children were taken away to be transformed into the white settlers, to civilize us. Talked to him about that, and one guy was telling me, the medicine people, he said, in medical school we learned the source and the history of medicines and the diseases. He says, did you know that syphilis came from the indigenous peoples in South America? And one of Columbus's men took it to Europe and spread it around. That's what it was. And he said, turned to one of our elders and says, oh, what do you think of that? The elder said, fair enough. You say you civilized us, we civilized you. So anyway, that's what happened there. So that's one of the examples. Next. Believe it or not, I'm just about finished over here. Okay? So those are the ones that happen with the, that heart is now broken. Our people still suffer from all of these things. That's intergenerational trauma. And yet we were given strength, given healing powers. Next. So now, So now, Pontiac, when he saw this, all what was happening at that time, Tecumseh from this area, these were the warriors that led, okay? There's only two of them that I mentioned here. There's many of them, as we have many today. And they, he said, told the settlers, you are raping our forests, you are raping our women, giving us fire water that drives our men crazy, and our families are being broken up. If you don't get your act together, more or less, those words, we're going to get rid of you. And so, this has happened in Detroit, Fort Detroit, causing them to get together because they did not kill anybody, they just surrounded that fort, knowing that in time they'd have to come out for some water, for some food. So they waited, and when they came out, that's what they told them. If you don't, we're going to get rid of you. If you don't stop what it is you're doing. They sent a delegation to Great Britain, to England, and where the king at the time ordered the Royal Proclamation of 1763. And the 1763 proclamation, I have a copy of it, and it says in part, was given to the Governor General Murray, and he said, and quote, and you are to inform yourself with the greatest exactness of the numbers, nature, and disposition of the several bodies of tribes of Indians, of the manner of their lives, and their rules and constitutions by which they are governed or regulated. Those were the instructions. Was that ever followed? You've forgotten about the fact that we had laws. Anyway, next. So, the original heartland of the Anishinaabe is all these, if you follow the Anishinaabe names. Lake Superior is Anishinaabe. Anishinaabe-gami, Anishinaabe-Kichigami, Lake Huron, the northern part, Oshawa-gami, and further south is Nottawasi, which is named after the Iroquois, and so on. They're all named Lake Ontario and Titumgami, so they have the original Anishinaabe names. Okay, so anyway, next. And then here is one of the most important parts I wanted to speak to you about, and you'll probably have a copy of it anyway now. There are 4 levels of Anishinaabe law. If you, the supreme law, if you wish to call that the Constitution of Anishinaabe in the English language translation, you can call it basically our supreme law. We had a supreme law, we still have a supreme law, and that's where we're headed for. That's where we're going back. But hard to say now, then the first one, the first order is called Inaaknigewin, sacred law of the Creator. That we do not understand. We can't understand what the Creator is thinking or what the Creator might be saying. So how do we know that there is one? Spiritually, we know. And what does it say? We don't really know exactly, except that through our lodges, we have Keynote, which is which you might refer to as a traditional law of our people, which you learn from the 4 lodges. Wavanawin, Shaudogawin, Okimawin, Vitavien, and those are still, Walpole Island still has these. So anyway, the writings, we're not a writing society, but not in the alphabetical sense. But you see the sun, you see all those signals visually, which is why I choose to use pictures instead of all we are not a writing society in the Euro-Canadian sense. We do have writings in Medellin, which you see in scrolls, and I use those as well. And we have Anishinaabe and Inaaknigewin. These first 2 cannot and must not be written. But some customary law, for instance, how you raise children, when you pick wild rice, how to do certain things, those are the customs, okay, that you do. So you get those from those two first sources. And you can write some of those in the English language, provided and absolutely must be consistent with the first three orders. You can't just go out in there like they do in Parliament. Go out in the corner there and write me a law. I'll have three processes with in Parliament of three readings and then the Senate, and then they pass the law. This is the part that's harsh. Whatever law is passed over there, right now C5, being passed, taken away. In 1888, St. Catherine's Inland case was passed, which gave the lands and resources to the province of Upper Canada and Lower Canada, Ontario and Quebec. In 1930s, passed on to the western provinces. So what about the Anishinaabe and their treaties? Well, they have fiduciary rights. What does that mean? In law, it means we are here, get this, we are here by virtue of the permission of the province of Ontario. They're the ones that own the land and the resources. They didn't even sign treaties, they were never even here. We were here. And yet, that's the law. Okay? And so, our lands and resources were taken away from us and by St. Catherine's Inland case. So you can now you can write certain laws. That's where I'm involved, and that's why I have to when I have to leave tomorrow morning, I have to go back to Winnipeg. Treaty 3 is in the process of, and they've asked me to help them write the law and education. I'm going to rely on people like Laura over here to tell us about how the traditional education should be written to help these communities. And you, as a community, you still have those laws. You haven't lost them. But don't forget them. We're going to reclaim them, going to reassert that. Except there's one that the Canadian government and the United States government cannot get their heads around. They're not capable of understanding that you can belong to land and thereby giving you ownership. Well, I'll come to that as my closing comments. So you can write those, that's what we're using. To harmonize, there's a long phrase, legal phrase. You can only write those things to use those to get along with the policies of other people, which is called in the English language that I use, the harmonization of the administration of jurisdiction. Wow, that's a long-winded way of saying, well, we want to get along with you. That's what the treaty said. Because the Treaty 3 said, Steve Chief Savage, the time will come when I will ask you to lend me one of your daughters and one of your sons to come and live with us and teach them that which is good. And we will lend you one of our sons and one of our daughters to teach that. And when they come back to tell us that which is good. Does that mean that you're going to harmonize with one another, live in peace and harmony? That was the idea. That's in treaty. Nobody hardly ever mentions that. I do, because that's the idea here. Harmonize the administration, not the laws, the policies. How you want to work it on the ground along with their other laws so that you do get along for the sake of our children. Next. So this is the way it's supposed to be. According to the way it's supposed to be. This is what they call reconciling sovereignties. What is sovereignty? There's a long, many volumes in English language of books written about sovereignties. To us, it simply means that the Creator gave us life, reason, the ability to think things out. Reason, okay? Life, reason, will, the ability to act on what you think is correct by following our certain spiritual inclinations and directions. Inaaknigewin, and the ability to say life, reason, will, freedom, the freedom to act on it. That's what sovereignty simply means. In its simplest terms, sovereignty means freedom that was given to us by the Creator. Not by England, not by the province of Ontario, not by the Canadian government, by the Creator, and exercised by your people collectively. That's what sovereignty means. And yet, some of our leaders talk about sovereignty in grandiose terms about that. I wonder what they mean. Did they quote the English way of woman? Nothing wrong with that, as they can convince the Canadian government. Okay, next. So then, that means the law of ownership by belonging. The Creator, in 1873, Chief Maldovinus came from that area where Laura Horton lives now in that community, Maldovinus, and also lived in partly between there and Lake of the Woods. And he told that when he was asked by the commissioner making the treaty, will you obey the laws of the Queen? He didn't answer yes or no. He answered this way: I will tell you what the Great Spirit told our people when he planted us here. Listen to the word planted. Like that tree planted here on the ground. Okay? So when you ask you, look at that word. Ojivik is a root, means planted. That's where the word Ojivwe comes from. You're planted in the ground. That means, as in the past, now and the future, the earth is our mother. The water beings, the four-legged, the flyers, the crawlers, are our brothers and sisters. We are the land, air, fire, and water. Let me close with this remark. That means you are the land. Can you sell yourself? Can you sell your mother, Mother Earth? Can you sell your grandmother? It is not consistent with sacred law. You can't do that. So our trees never surrendered the land, and you are still here, and you will be here until the Creator decides otherwise. So I close off with Keynote, Keynote Inaaknigewin, Keynote Inaaknigewin You are that life. My parting words. You are the land, the water, the air, the fire. Respect yourself. Kizhebowse Makwa.